So I never do this, but this summer, I'm actually opening up 2 slots for private coaching to work one-on-one with me. And this specific opportunity is geared toward leaders who find themselves questioning their purpose and are unsure of what their next chapter in life will be. They're essentially at a crossroads and they want more out of life and are just tired of following the rules. They want to trailblaze their own path and live life on their terms without risking their credibility in the marketplace. Does this sound like you? Well, look, coming from corporate, I have over 2 decades of experience and I understand the sacrifices, the risks, darling, and the game that you're forced to play in order to be taken seriously or worse, accepted. You've worn the mask, dressed the part, talked the talk, and from the outside looking in, you've made it. Yet, you're unhappy. You don't want to fake it anymore, and deep down, you know that you're destined for more. I've trained over 20,000 leaders on how to use their uniqueness and their magic to build a life of influence, purpose, and freedom. A life where they don't need a vacation to escape or feel alive. A life that is exciting and peaceful at the same time. So if you're listening to this and it resonates and it's speaking to your heart and ready to transform your life, expand into the unknown, and explore the beautiful parts of you that have been hidden for far too long, I invite you to complete the application to participate in this private coaching opportunity. This is going to be super high touch, very white glove kind of experience. So once the 2 slots are taken, they're gone. So if you're interested, I will put the application link in the show notes. Make sure to apply, check that out. I can't wait to hear about your goals and where we are going to take your life next. So cheers to your renewed life. This is something that a lot of entrepreneurs like to skip over, whether it's because they're not educated, they think they're not big enough.
Don't wait until the shoe drops to go ahead and start the protection process. And even though you know you're right and you have the arguments to back you, if you can't afford to actually protect yourself and litigate how you feel, you're dead in the water.
If someone did try to come after you, you have all of this kind of proof that, well, I've been using this name.
What you don't want is me on your back, okay? Don't play. You don't want to put all of that time and research into drafting a formal business plan if you haven't even kicked the tires. Love this. I'm about to get excited. These are the questions that I live for.
What's up, mi gente? Welcome back to another episode on Banking on Cultura. I am your host, Victoria Jenn Rodriguez, and I'm coming to you live from hot-ass New York City. It has been a crazy heat wave for the last week and a half. That's why your girl got the spaghetti straps out here, because it is just caliente out here, y'all. It is sizzling hot to the point where it's almost hard to breathe. I was walking to the studio from the train station and I was like, oh my God. I was like, do I need to go more to the gym, or is it just hard to breathe? Probably a combination of both. But anywho, I'm really excited about today's episode because this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs like to skip over, whether it's because they're not educated, they think they're not big enough, or they're just like, you know what, I'll get to it. And the next thing you know, shit hits the fan and you end up spending a lot of money to get out of this predicament that you could have avoided from the beginning. And that is none other than trademarks and protecting your IP, y'all, your intellectual property. And so I've invited an amazing guest, Domonique Price, who is a lawyer, to tell us about how we can prepare ourselves on all things trademarks and just protect ourselves out here. So Domonique, welcome to Banking on Cultura, amor.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, but I cannot start before I say congratulations. Watching this go from idea to launch to you having a few episodes under your belt, I could not be more proud of what you're doing for the culture, and I pray it continues to just get bigger.
I appreciate that. And Domonique, you've literally been there from the beginning, because we were talking about this a year and a half ago when I was first, in conversations with my girl, Alex. Shout out to Alex, Drea. I don't know. She's changing it up. She's like Madonna. Yeah. She changed up her name, but she's amazing. We were thinking about this podcast. And so we brought you in to kind of consult and think about like how we can protect the brand and make sure that we're like crossing our I's and like crossing our I's. You hear me? Dotting our I's, crossing our T's. You guys know what I'm saying. It's the heat, y'all. And making sure that we protect ourselves. So I'm really excited to have you on the show, but give people a vibe of who you are, why you are, and all the things, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty.
Thank you. I tell people all the time, I'm just a girl from around the way that they accidentally gave a law degree. I don't know how it happened, and I don't know
accidentally, girl. It happened from you taking your ass to school.
Well, it's funny because it was the plan, but yet very far from the plan. So growing up, I did pageants, I modeled, and I really wanted that to be the game plan. But I also secretly always wanted to be an attorney. And so I was like, okay, we're going to model while this body is hot. And then when things slow down, we'll go to law school and all of that. And so fun fact, I tried out for America's Next Top Model the same week that I got my letter of acceptance to Virginia State University. And I had to make a decision like, okay, modeling and doing social media influencer stuff, like that'll give you a certain level of a bag, but being able to actually help my community in areas that I've seen them struggle is literally game changing. And so I was like, okay, you know what, we're going to do this. It's going to take 7.5 years anyways. So you might as well start now and you can model on the side. And so I applied to law school, got in, and was the then reigning Miss Oregon United States. And so I just was like, I'm going to take, fewer classes so that I can still, live out my reign. But in doing that, it kind of sparked my interest in wanting to really, really help not only small business owners, but influencers, really, really, really galvanizing and driving the point home of why it is so important for you to be protecting your intellectual property. And from there, started a whole firm.
Wow. That I did not know that fun fact about you. Okay, Miss Oregon. Okay, honey, I see you. And that makes sense because if you're just listening and you're not tuning in on the YouTube streets, like she's tall, she's gorgeous. So I can totally see you going down that lane. And we did not plan to both wear glasses today. It just happened that way.
Because we're fabulous.
Yes, because we're fabulous, darling. And we both have them super cute and stylish because it's how we do.
Come on.
Yeah. So we like to start our show with some wojinje. So give us something that we can't Google about you.
Something that you cannot Google about me, and I don't tell people this, you'd have to have gone to high school with me, but I played volleyball and I was horrible. Okay, shout out to the Olympic team right now, but I was horrible. I wouldn't invite people to the games. I didn't want anybody to know I played.
You were a shame player?
What? First of all, I'm like, balls flying in my face. No, thank you. Okay. So I played volleyball actually for 2 years and I don't tell anybody. Like, I won't even play beach volleyball for fun.
That's it. You're over it.
I'm over it.
I played volleyball in high school too. I like to think that I was good. I mean, that's what I have to tell myself. I mean, we were I mean, my team was good. And I feel like I did my purpose. But that's so funny that you played volleyball. Look at that. We have a lot of things in common over here. Because listen, I wanted to model when I was young as well.
And you still can.
And yes, I can. Because this face, okay. But also, I wanted to be a lawyer.
No way.
I did. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I did this. It was kind of like an internship program with the district attorney in Queens. And after that experience, I decided I no longer wanted to be a lawyer because, honey, it was too much reading. Too much reading, paying attention to detail. Like, I'm more of like a visionary, big picture kind of thinker. That's like my jam. That's where I shine. And I knew law school and being in the trenches in that way and just having to be so finite with everything, it was like, no, this is not my calling. This ain't for me. So I salute lawyers because I know what is required?
Well, I think you are multifaceted. I think you would have excelled as an attorney, but your brain just wanted to take you down a different lane because you're so creative and you're so driven. There's so many things that you could have done. So it's not too late.
Oh, thank you, darling. Nope, not doing it. not going for the bar. I mean, shout out to Kim Kardashian and all the girlies. Or go and get their law degree. I do love a good debate, though.
Me too.
I do love a good debate, and I love making a business case for things, but I just, it's too much.
It is
it's
a
too
lot.
Much. It's too much. So kudos to you for that. So first of all, what is a trademark, and why is it important for entrepreneurs to make sure they are protecting themselves?
That is such a good question, but it goes a little further than just what is trademarks. You really have to understand the suite of intellectual property. And so intellectual property are actually tangible assets. And so in that suite of protection, you have trademarks, copyrights, and patents. And so I like to tell my clients, think of it from the perspective of trademarks are going to protect the external of your business. So think of the Nike brand name, the Nike swoosh, the Just Do It. But for their internal, I don't know how many of you caught Jordan's Nike special that they did. They've done some videos for Phil Knight and really explaining the history of Nike. Those genius creative works will be done protected through a copyright. Now, more of your technical, your actual inventions, your methods, that actually can be patented. And so you always want to understand, because depending on what type of industry or service or product you decide to launch, you potentially could need all three. You may only need a trademark, or you may only need a copyright and a patent, but it's really critical to understand how the three different intellectual properties work, because you want to know what triggers in your brain, like, okay, I just created a new shampoo collection. Is there anything patentable in this recipe that I may want to see if it aligns with patentability? Or I am the next Louis Vuitton and I've just created my own signature fabric. Does this align to the effect of having a copyright? Or I know that I have the next Apple brand, which is literally worth billions of dollars for their trademark alone. And so because you don't know what you are starting off right now, what that can grow into, just like having children, you don't know what they're going to grow up to be. You want to make sure that you're putting them in the best position to win, and that's having intellectual property protection surrounding it.
Mic drop. Okay. Couple of clarifying questions. So what about if you're like a learning and development consultant or a coach and you've created this framework? Like, what does that fall under?
I love this. I'm about to get excited. These are the questions that I live for. Okay, so two things. So for like your training method materials, any workbooks, you're going to get a copyright. But because you're building a development company, you might potentially want to hire on other coaches, or you want to be able to go out into the community and teach other people how to do your methodology. Well, that type of branding, you're going to want your trademark for. So remember, that type of business is going to need both trademarks for their branding, but then also a copyright for their training materials.
Interesting. Okay, so what if you're like first starting, you have an idea, you haven't produced anything yet. What should you do?
So I always say, like, put 5 attorneys in a room and each one is going to give you a different response. Look, before I was ever an attorney, I was a business owner. And so I attack every single thing that I tell my client is what would have made sense for me as a starting out business owner and not just a business attorney. And so what I basically tell people is that have a solid feasibility plan, which is a shorter version of a business plan, because we're in the cookie cutter stage. Like, we're not trying to have a 30-page business plan because we don't even know if this is going to pass muster. Like right now, we just need the nitty gritty so that we can go ahead and do some beta testing to make sure that it makes sense to then pour money back into this business. And so what I tell people all of the time is craft a really good feasibility plan. Make sure that the business name that you want to use is actually available. You want to not only do a basic trademark search, but you also want to search on Google and and on social media platforms, because a name may be available on GoDaddy, but it's taken on all the social media platforms. And now you have to start from scratch from a naming perspective. So kind of going through, those are my two like really big ones, is having a feasibility plan and making sure whatever naming or branding configurations you're going to use are actually available.
So where do you go to like find that out? Like, is it just Google or is it somewhere else?
Two places I want you to go, and I want you to actually take notes here. And if you are watching the video and you can't take notes right now, screenshot where we are in the video so you can come back to this. The very first thing that I want you to do is go to uspto.gov, and you are going to do a basic search. So if you click on their top links page, it'll give you kind of like a drop down of all of the important stuff that are high level for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. You'll go down a tiny bit and you'll click search. You'll put in whatever your naming configuration is and you'll click search. Now, all you're looking for, because you're not a trained attorney, is just to see if you see any hits. If you don't see any, you're in the clear. But little note here, even if you do get some results back, you still want to have an attorney vet those, because they potentially could be in a completely different classification than you, and you'd be totally fine with still operating. Think of Delta Airplanes and Delta Faucets. They're able to coexist because they're in two completely different markets. So it wouldn't confuse a consumer. Then the next thing I want you to do, now that you know that it's available on USPTO, I want you to do a Google search, and in parentheses, just put website, social media, or any other mention, and then whatever that brand name is. And so if there's an Instagram or a website or a Facebook page, that should pull up those results so that you can make sure that you're in the clear.
Wow. Okay. So that is really good to know. So, okay. So let's walk through the process.
Yes.
New entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, this is going to be my brand name. Mm-hmm. I have my feasibility plan. By the way, what exactly is included in that plan?
So a feasibility plan is basically a business plan, but a shorter, condensed version. So think of like Twitter versus an Instagram caption. Like, it's just the brevity of what you are speaking to. So in a feasibility plan, you're going to still list out like your mission. You're going to list out your target information. So who is your target customer? What does the actual market look like for the space that you're going into? What will be your initial launching marketing mechanisms? And what key individuals do you need to have to make it come to fruition? That's it. Like, this is literally bare bones. I literally have a free one on my website that like walks you through the steps of how to do it, because I realized that so many, like back in the day, I don't know if you remember this, people were spending thousands of dollars to get business plans made off of a pure idea. But you've now, let's say, for example, you've now spent $2,000 to $3,000 on a professional business plan only for you to have one meeting with an investor, and you done flipped your whole idea on its head, and you're starting from scratch again. And now you're going to have to reinvest that money again on another business plan. But if you go the route of doing that information yourself and doing the feasibility guide, you'll at least have an idea of, is there actual market space for me to enter this area? Do I have a good understanding of the people that I want to market to as far as my ideal customer, and can I really scale this, is what you're going to be able to answer in a feasibility guide. So then you can ask yourself, is this something I do want to put money to? Is it something that I want to protect with IP? Or, is this enough bones to it that I could go seek out an investor? But you, again, like I said, you don't want to put all of that time and research into drafting a formal business plan if you haven't even kicked the tires.
Or you don't even want to get a trademark if you haven't.
Don't even get me started.
If you haven't gone through it, because I could totally see, because we're special creatures and we have amazing ideas, 10 ideas. We want to trademark all 10 of our branding ideas and not even move forward with any one of them. Right. Is the recommendation that, like, before you put any monies towards trademark, copyright, any of that, you actually give this some real thought.
Yes.
And make an executive decision like, okay, I'm doubling down on this. I'm moving forward with this.
Yes. And again, some of my fellow attorneys are going to hit me when I say this, and I can protect myself if you want to be an Instagram thug. So I got this. But Because I know that I'm definitely the minority when it comes to this thought process, but I personally feel that you should have made at least a few dollars in what it doesn't have to be a lot, but one sale, even if you discount it 95%, but you want to have one proof of concept fully from an actual funding perspective as well, unless you have a ton of money to invest, which some of us are blessed to have when we start our business, especially if we've gone from 9 to 5. But you really, really, really want to make sure that you're not throwing this idea or this product into the abyss, praying that, customers come, and then a year later you haven't sold a thing and you got this expensive trademark, and now you're trying to figure out how you're going to reposition yourself. So a lot of people say like you should trademark before you launch. It's not that I disagree with that thought process, but I want to have seen you do some beta testing before you have launched so that we can, in that interim time, protect your IP.
Right. Let's give a real life example, because you and I worked on trademarking Banking on Cultura.
Yes.
And there were tons of questions you were asking me. And I was like, I don't know. So, because it's like one thing to trademark, and then there's like subcategories within the trademark situation, which makes things really complicated. So let's share with the people, like for example, let's just use Banking on Cultura. When we were trademarking Banking on Cultura, your advice to me was to like start with like one of the categories, right?
Yes.
And then it was like, once it grows, we'll expand it to the other categories. Yes. So we applied for this
41
year ago.
Oh, I thought you were going to say what classification.
No, we are going to get into the classification, but we applied for this over a year ago. And application is still
pending.
Still pending. So just to give people like a heads up of how long this takes. But the good thing is, you did tell me that like once you put in an application, it's like somebody can't come in and be like, oh.
Well, it's not that they can't. They can still kind of come in and try and oppose your trademark, but you have more rights because you've done your due diligence and you've gone ahead and filed. So now it's their burden of proof to prove that they either had superior rights or you filed yours wrong. Like they literally can come up with a million reasons why they want to oppose your trademark. It's a whole nother conversation as well.
Okay.
But if you had already filed, if you had already been using it, it gives you more priority, more leverage.
Which is also the case, like if you go live with a website, you go live with a brand and you're doing events, you're marketing, etc., and you didn't go after the trademark, if someone did try to come after you, you have all of this kind of proof that, well, I've been using this name, selling this, blah, 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 and you have more leverage at that point, right?
Yes, you have more leverage. And not only will you have more leverage, so there's this weird, interesting thing in the legal world where certain things are automatically fact. You don't have to try and prove that point. It's a matter of factual law. So when you already have your copyright or your trademark or your patent, you don't have to spend a ton of time showing and proving that you own it, because your registration is automatic proof that you have ownership. So then it becomes on their terms of really trying to come, like you'll literally see things written on napkins, like old, like pieces of fax paper. Like people will literally dig up anything they possibly can to try and oppose a mark, to try and say that they had prior rights. But that literally is going to be the first thing that they look at, is who actually has registration. And that it just gives you a different playing field.
And filing an application doesn't mean registration? Or
No. So like you were saying before, we started your application over a year ago. And so the trademark process can take over 18 months. Like Cardi B's trademark took years. Like I want to say off the top of my head, I would think it was like 2.5, 3 years before her slogan was officially trademarked.
What, the old?
Yes. I can't do it, or else I would have done it. I have practiced in the mirror.
I didn't know that she trademarked that.
She tried to. And she actually did an interview on it. She had seen the girls from Keeping Up with Kardashians do it on the show. And she was like, hold on now, I want all my coins. So they started the process late, which is one of those things, again, why I started off with saying is you want to understand all three of the different intellectual property protections, because she didn't realize that that's something that she should have protected straight out of the gate. And if she would not have done that, think about the licensing opportunities, think about the merch opportunities like she would not have access to because she didn't trademark it.
Interesting.
So regardless of how long the process takes, still do it as early as you can financially afford to do it.
Yeah, but I think in this case, like, nobody knew that was gonna pop.
Right.
So it's kind of like, it was kind of like, what's her name? Kylie.
Yes.
When she did that Good Morning Sunshine or whatever it was.
Was it like Rise and Shine?
Yeah, something. And then it went crazy, and then she went to kind of go and trademark. Like, some things you just don't know
you
if
just
it's going to pop.
And I tell business owners all the time, like, you have to look at companies like a Microsoft. Like, they started with one trademark. They now have hundreds of trademarks, copyrights, patents. Like, just start with your one, and you can add on as you go. And when you start seeing, like, say, for example, you have a really dope collection name and you didn't even think to trademark the name of your collection, but now you see people, your customers using it in everyday lingo. So you then go back and trademark it. That's fine. But for those major points in your business, don't wait until the shoe drops to go ahead and start the protection process.
So some might argue that, like, if you already have the website, if you're already doing events, if you're already, the brand is out there, like, and that you have proof of that, then, like, even if somebody does try to come for you, like, you're good. So what's the point of a trademark?
You're good if you have tens of thousands of dollars to litigate that in court. Mm-hmm. That's the issue.
Okay.
It's not a matter of, do I have the time to argue this? Do I have the evidentiary proof to prove it? It's, do I have the time and money to actually litigate the issue?
Right.
Because, for example, I very early on in my career, I worked with a client who was receiving cease and desist letters from Louis Vuitton because he was a designer and he thought that it was okay to use their logo and fabrics on different items that he was making. And his perspective was, everyone does this on social media. So many fashion designers take like similar looks or patterns and they try and do like spoofs. Why is this a big issue? The issue is that they own it. And so regardless of if you're trying to say like, well, this particular design, they don't even do. Like, so what's the big issue? This shouldn't be infringement. It is. And if he wanted to fight it, he could have. And I gave him the, quote unquote percentages of success. But off the top and on average, on a low end, it was going to cost over $30,000 to just start litigation. Mm-hmm. And you got to think, these larger luxury brands, they have whole budgets to bankrupt small businesses. It's literally one of the things that, like, I get teary-eyed and frustrated about, because I've seen hardworking, like, single moms, like single dads, like older people get totally just like bombarded by the anxieties of getting a letter from a Louis Vuitton or Nordstrom's or ESPN, and you're being told that you are in violation of this large company's intellectual property. That's scary for a business owner. Super scary. And even though you know you're right and you have the arguments like to back you, if you can't afford to actually protect yourself and litigate like how you feel, you're dead in the water. Right. So instead, just go ahead and have the protection because like I mentioned before, it's going to be a matter of factual law that you can already prove that you own it. So the amount of money now that you would have to spend to litigate your ownership is a lot less than what the other person has to actually prove.
Got it. Okay.
I know that was a little long-winded.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, and this is helpful. So let's circle back. So banking on Cultura, we were going for the trademark, and you advised me to kind of go into one particular category. And this is why it's important for you to, like, I believe, not to do like LegalZoom, because there's tons of ways for you to get trademarks.
There is.
Right?
There is.
But in my experience, I was like, I got tons and tons of questions, and I need somebody who's gonna like break this down and almost like handhold me through this process, which is exactly what you did. Like, I was like, mira, what does this mean? Should I not go this way? Should I not go that way? Which is like really helpful versus kind of just being thrown in with like a subgroup of people to do it. But so we decided to go after like an entertainment category was called.
So when we originally spoke, the lanes kind of that you were, and I hope I don't give anything away.
I know, I'm kind of like, damn, should I be saying
no,
this?
No, I know.
And try to go after my
this. I know how to do this. First of all, what you don't want is me on your back, okay? Don't play. Ooh, I'm like a pit bull in a skirt. I do not play about my clients, okay? Now I done lost my train of thought because you was about to bring
we went after one category,
yes,
and then we're going to build other categories.
Yes, so when we originally talked, I'm really big on, I want to know your vision, and that's what you don't get with going through like a legal Zoom, because when I ask what's your 5-year vision, I'm asking because I want to listen to the nuances of what you potentially may need protection for. So when we originally talked, you were so excited about the podcast, but you also were going to potentially have other trainings, workshops, live events. We even talked about potential merchandise. Well, all of those would be separate categories. But if you need the actual podcast before you can kick off the events, before you can go live with your products and your collections, you got to start with the main thing. So what do? We started with, let's make sure that the podcast name is protected. And then as we grow and we make sure that this has legs, we'll add the other classifications.
Yeah, which I think is really great advice, because I know for me, the way I usually work is I'm like, let's just do everything. So I don't have to worry about it later. But when you get into like strategic wise, like what makes the most sense, and also expense wise, what makes the most sense, you tend to retreat and think about like, okay, hold on a second. Like, what do we need to do right now? Like, what is the first step to make sure like we're protected going into this launch is kind of like how I was thinking about it.
Yes. And so for you in particular, your very first thing that I told you needed to do from a protection perspective was to make sure that the brand name was protected.
Right.
But let's say, for example, if you were more on the educational side first and you already had a course that you were going to be launching before you did the podcast, I would have gave completely different advice. I would have wanted you to protect that under the educational classification and then do the podcast later. Right. So I always tell people, like, there's no one size fits all for how you should move with your protection, because if you are in fashion, it's going to be a different process. If you are in entertainment, it's a different, like, you're still going to do all of the same things, but your order of priority is just a little bit differently. And then major facts on this, you could potentially change your mind completely about the other 6 categories you wanted to start in a year because you realize that this is the bread and butter of what your audience really wants. So I tell people, don't get too big for your britches. Let's start with the main thing, and then as you grow, we'll add on the side dishes.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. So before we get into cost, because I know people are literally like listening to this and they're like, okay, when are we going to talk about how much is this going to cost me?
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Ooh, this is really good. You should know about this. So I don't know about you, but I've been known to procrastinate, especially when things scare the hell out of me. The fear alone would have me stuck, overwhelmed, confused, and all types of self-doubt. And don't even get me started on the imposter syndrome. Okay. After getting laid off, not once, but 3 times, honey, I realized that the security blanket that I made up in my head was just an excuse because I didn't really want to bet on myself. The corporate benefits that had me in that headlock, girl, they went out the window once my job decided that they no longer needed me.
Turns out that I'll save a whole nickel if I cut your salary completely.
The truth is, the only security blanket guarantee is the one that you create for yourself. In other words, until you start a business, you will always be at the mercy of a company's headcount, and you will never have complete control over your time, which means you'll be renting out your thought leadership and helping build someone else's dream instead of your own. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Don't you think it's time you stop playing small and tap all the way into your power, sis? Check out www.victoriajen.com/training to learn my 3-step process, the exact 3 steps that I took to make the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. And this is helpful even if you don't know what type of business to start and have only one source of income. And this is absolutely free. It is my gift to you. I want you to win. It's winning season. In fact, what's that? It smells like winning season. Okay, so tap in and I'll see you inside the training. Let's go. I would like to address, because I'm still trying to make sure I understand trademark, copyright, and then what's the other one?
Patents. Yes.
So are they more aligned to like a formula, like for a tangible product?
Yes and no, because,
or like a research
potentially
paper,
like
something.
a gas could be patented, which isn't technically tangible. So I'm like, I want to pick my words right, but look at it like just you right now in your glorious goddessness. We would patent your mic. If we had a bomb name for your glasses, we would trademark that, and the notes that are on your card would be copyrightable.
Oh, okay.
Does that help?
Okay, that helps a little bit. Okay.
No, I want to walk out of here with you being very confident.
Okay. So you said patent the glasses like the frame.
No, oh yes, we could patent the frame.
Okay, like the frame. Okay. And then we would copyright like my format of how I run my show.
Yes.
And then we would trademark the name.
Yes.
Okay. So
I looked at you a little puzzled when you said glasses frame, because one of the big things with patents is that it has to be unique and not novel. So there's not a lot of changes. So a really great example is the new Google glasses, patentable. The frames that we have on, they're not unique. Unique in color and design, right. But the actual like framework of how to build it is going to be the same outside of the design aesthetics.
Okay. So let's say if I'm making arroz con gandules, I'm making rice and beans, okay? And like I'm putting all my ingredients, my salt, my pepper, my adobo, sazon, all the jazz, but I have this like grandma secret ingredient. If I add that to my recipe, is that like patentable?
No. So what they're looking for is kind of like a complete new and different way that something can be used or offered. So it's the reason why the iPhone was such a big patent for a long time, because the actual design to take the keypad off the interface was so new and different. Like, so I want you to think about it from that perspective. It's like, it's like when I said the Google glasses, it's like who in their right mind would have thought to put a camera like and internet capabilities like actually in the form of glasses. So it took it to a new use.
Got it. Okay, this is helpful. Now I feel like, I'm more clear.
I love this.
On this, yes. Because people need to be informed, like even when they're speaking to like an attorney or trying to seek out advice. Like I feel like that foundational stuff, you need to know, because it's very easy to kind of like dance circles around someone if they're like not clear. And then next thing you know, you got a trademark, a patent, and copyright for something you don't even need. Like you don't even need all those things.
It happens a lot. I was listening to an interview of, and I'll let him be nameless, but a celebrity who was really irate and upset. And he was like, well, I have my copyright, so I didn't even understand why it was a problem. He needed a trademark and not a copyright. And it's those little nuances, and why I always stress, like, I want you to know all three, because you don't know when you're going to potentially need one or all three.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let's talk about pricing.
Okay, so trademarks, when a private attorney does it, is a little bit more expensive. And so you're going to be anywhere from like $1,000 to nowhere more than, you should never be spending more than $1,500 on a trademark. As it relates to copyrights, you're looking more at that. I would say like a typical attorney is going to charge anywhere from about $300 to $700, depending on what the copyrighted work is. And patents, it literally just, like most patent attorneys have a huge range of what they charge, because you literally have to actually design the model and put it in the application. So most, I should say almost all, but most patent attorneys have an engineering background so that they can make sure that the mechanics of what they're drafting make sense. And so that's going to be on the higher scale. A patent can literally range anywhere from like a few thousands to in the tens of thousands of dollars, depending on what you're building.
Oh, wow.
So think of like the Ford motor, or the iPhone. Two completely different applications because of the blueprint and the models that have to go inside of the application.
So you can't just go to like one lawyer and be like, get me my trademark, my copyright, and my patent, you have to go to like...
You can.
Okay.
But I want you to make sure that you ask that attorney if those are their specialties. So I am a trained corporate attorney. And so anyone who practices on the corporate side is either going to be focused on business law, employment law, or like, say, for example, like a specialty area like real estate for most often. And so because I got my start with the NBA and then moved over to Microsoft, my background was always contracts and IP. Well, my main bread and butter was always contracts. And it just kind of slipped into IP. And so because those are my areas of specialty, I feel confident, but I've had situations where clients will be referred to me. We start working together and they're like, yeah, I had somebody do this for me already. And it was a personal injury attorney. Well, your personal injury attorney is awesome probably at getting you damages for an accident, but they don't know the ins and outs of the different type of classifications and when to file this. Like, yes, there's generalized knowledge, but the real like nitty gritty, you need somebody who specializes in it. I'm grateful that I've had my corporate background because it allows me to have a few different specialties. But always just ask the attorney, like, what is your actual specialty? What do you love doing? Because that shows in people's work as well. And you really just want to make sure, I always say, like, there's business attorneys and there's litigators. So you want to make sure that at least if it's not their specialty, they're at least a business attorney.
Okay. Guys, I hope, listen to me. I hope you are taking all the notes because this right here is just amazing gems. So thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. So let's keep this party going. Classifications, because what I did learn as I was going through the trademark process is like, there's a cost for the trademark and then there's cost for each classification class. So a classification on average, like how much is that?
Anywhere from 200 to like 6 at the most.
Okay.
But you should never be spending more than half of what you spent on the initial application for an additional classification. The key, though, is to add the classification at the original time of filing, because when you, like, say, for example, people say, I have a trademark, but I want to add a classification. Well, it's not like an add-on thing. When you are doing it after the initial application has been submitted, it's literally just submitting a whole brand new application. So 9 times out of 10, unless you're working with the same attorney who did the initial filing, you're literally just going to be spending money on a whole new application.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. So
I know.
Shit.
I know.
Now I'm like, damn, should we have just...
No.
Okay.
We talked about this.
Okay.
I got you. See, it pays to have business besties. I'm trying to tell you.
For real, though.
No,
super important to have like your business besties and like a variety of people who have a skill set outside of what your skill set is, because it helps, really, really helps. So thanks for being, a business bestie.
Got you.
Okay. So we have pricing models. Can someone actually apply on their own?
Yes, people do it every single day, and 90% of those applications get rejected. And so I struggle because I never want to make, and I know it's in messaging and how I say it, but I never want anyone to think that I'm telling them that they're not intelligent by saying, don't do this on your own. It literally comes from the perspective of, I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've done it from the highest level of a literally Fortune 500 company to working with your Nana and Papa's business down the street. One thing I know for sure is that there's little nuances that get missed. And what happens is the application is not necessarily difficult to file. It's if you get an office action, it scares people. They do not know how to respond. You're giving a very finite time to respond to it. And if you don't respond in that time period, you automatically lose it. So I always tell people, if you have the money to invest, just pay for somebody to do it, because you potentially could be losing time and more money if it has to be refiled down the line.
Yep, a business write-off.
Come on now.
Business write-off. I agree. I mean, I think technically anybody can do anything on their own.
I agree.
But if you want to accelerate the process, if you want to save your time, the anxiety, the thought leadership that you're going to have to actually apply to this thing, you might want to invest. But for those of you who are scrappy and you're like on the hustle vibes, listen, you got options. You know what I mean? You got options. You can visit Domonique's site. You can go to her Instagram. She dropping gems all the time to get you started. But more likely than not, like in most cases, you're going to have to reach out and invest at some point when things are kind of above your head. And whenever it comes to like legal stuff and reading the fine print and all that jazz, I go to professionals. It's like when you have a cold, the first instinct is like, oh, okay, I could cure this myself. Like I got my NyQuil, I got my routine, you know, I have my house kind of remedies that I do, you know, Vicks for Spanish people solves everything. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like we have those, but like once it goes a level above that where like you can't do it anymore, you go out and you seek a professional. I, on the other hand, rather work smarter instead of harder. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to nip this in the bud from the beginning, send it to an expert. And that's just my rule of thumb with everything, especially when it comes to like legal stuff. Okay, so I want to touch on the fact that you were in corporate and made the transition. Why did you make the transition? And ultimately, like, what needed to be in place in order for you to make the decision? Like, talk to us about that.
Ooh, such a good question. Well, technically, so I started my firm in 2016, but didn't actually leave my corporate position until spring of 2017. And so I always knew that I wanted to have a small or solo law practice because I knew that I wasn't going to be a lawyer forever, but I'm really big on multiple streams of income. And so if I have this intellect and this skill and this talent in this one area, whether I do it on a large scale, full time or small, like I'm always going to hold myself out as a lawyer to receive clients to do services. So it's like, okay, let's start this business. Let's see what happens. And so I started my business, and literally most people have like slow churn where it takes a minute for things to get going. Like I was booked and busy like month 1. And so what happened was we got into month 4 and I had an opportunity to do a TV show, but they wanted me to commit to 6.5 weeks. But I had 8 weeks of saved vacation. So I didn't think anything of it. I had already confirmed that I would do the show and emailed my boss, like kind of like a courtesy, like, hey, I have 8 weeks of vacation, but I'm only taking 6. Just wanted to get your approval before I put in my vacation request. And literally the day before I was supposed to fly out to shoot the show, I had got a response back from our head of legal, not even my main boss, but the head of legal. And we're like, we can't approve you taking a full 6 weeks off consecutively. So, you know, me, I'm like, well, where in this employee handbook does it say that your vacation can't be consecutive? Because I don't see that language. And I know contract law. So I took a deep breath and I wrote in all caps, I quit. Thank you. And I left the next day for Anguilla.
What?
Yes. So I always tell people when people are like, how much money do you need to save before you launch? Is there anything you wanted to make sure you had before you launch? No, my original plan was that I was going to do both corporate and my firm for a full year before I exited. So I left in end of February and was not originally going to leave until that following September.
But they tried. They tried you. Yeah, and you were like, you know what?
Yeah, no.
Bye.
Because I'm really big on show me where it says that.
Right.
I'm not going to argue. Just show me where it says that.
It must be so interesting to watch lawyers go back and forth.
I get very nervous. Like, everybody turn away because I don't want you to see me act like this. I was in Walmart one day giving a manager the bee's knees. And I was so embarrassed, but I couldn't stop. I could not stop. I had the policy in my hand, like, where does it say that?
Oh my God.
I walked out ashamed.
I love it. I love it. So 7 years in, I actually started my business in 2017 as well. So what would be your one piece of advice 7 years in?
It's okay to fire yourself. That is the season that I'm in. I think so often we start businesses, we grow brands, and we become even more chained to it than we did our corporate jobs. And that's not why I started a business. And so if there's ever a time where I need to fire myself as CEO of Price Law, I am 100% okay with doing that because I know that the vision is bigger than just me. So that means I don't have to be the primary principal attorney at the firm. It means I'm okay with allowing somebody else to come in and operate. It took me forever to even hire an assistant because I was so nervous of somebody looking at my email. Like, I'm somebody where like I had to like literally grow into this space of being like, okay, I'm fireable. I officially can be fired as head of Price Law. And I think that is like where we should all kind of strive to get to.
By the way, that name, Price Law, like your name, Domonique Price, just sounds like regal. Like it.
Thank you, but I
like it sounds
credit.
like it's a law firm.
It is.
I love it. Okay, so let's get into the Talk That Talk segment where we address something taboo in the culture. And we had previously discussed something that I thought was super, super important for us to bring to the forefront around estate planning.
Yes.
Which is also an area of expertise. So talk to us about how our community, Black and Brown communities, think about estate planning and why they need to get serious about this, whether they have multiple assets or they're renting an apartment.
I get really frustrated when it comes to the concept of minorities and estate planning because I've read research, I've looked at the stats. I don't understand what our hang up is in moving forward with estate planning because when you look at the numbers, it's staggering. Like literally over 50% of non-minorities have some form of estate planning done. 77% of minorities said that they have zero.
Wow.
And so when you think about closing the generational like wealth gap, it starts with estate planning. But more important than just estate planning, it really, really comes with passing down knowledge. I think we got into a season where more minorities were hitting middle class, more minorities were hitting that number 1%. But I don't think we did a good job of going back and actually teaching what that succession looked like. Instead, we just started leaving assets as we could because it was the first time in generations that we had any assets to leave in the first place. And because that was a miss, it didn't get properly transferred from one generation to the next because a lot of minorities either don't want to face the conversation, they think that they don't have enough assets to even start estate planning, or shrug, mom and them gonna get it anyway, so why do the hard work? But what they don't understand is that you're costing your estate money by not doing any type of preparations because you then have to, well, not you particularly, but your estate has to pay probate fees to go through the process of handling your estate. And it's even harder if there's no estate planning done whatsoever. So even though a will has to go through the probate process, it's going to be a lot quicker and a lower cost as opposed to somebody who dies what they like to call interstate and they have nothing done.
Okay, wait. You're too technical.
Okay.
Let's make it really simple.
Really
simple for folks who don't have any assets. They don't have a home. They might have a car. They don't have any kids.
If you are literally out in this world, it's me, fi me, and your car Daisy. If you know that your little cousin has been working super hard or your brother is going to be in high school soon, you can literally get a will drafted that literally just outlines that my car Daisy is going to my niece. My car Daisy is going to my brother, because if something happens to you and you have nothing in writing, if your parents are still living, they automatically get your estate, not your siblings, not your cousin that you've helped raise or your niece. It literally goes to the next surviving family member. So I always tell people, like, don't just watch celebrity news, start taking lessons from it that you want to implement in your own life. And so one of the things I was talking to a colleague about recently is the issue with Takeoff. Like, we're talking about an individual who has a ton of asset, who has a ton of IP assets as well through his music catalog, and had zero estate planning done. He was estranged from his father, had never really even had a conversation with his father. But because he has passed away, there was nothing in writing to his estate. And even though he has a whole song that he was leaving everything to his mom anyways, that's not admissible in court. They can use it as character, but they can't use it as a determinative fact as it relates to estate planning and it being drafted. And so his mom and dad have been in court arguing over his estate. And it's the saddest thing in the world. They should be grieving their son and they're fighting over assets. So whether you have your Cardazy or you have Grammy award-winning music catalog that you're thinking about protecting, you still want to sit down and draft at basic level. Every single one of us needs to have a will. Now, if we want to get a little bit more jazzy and we have a business or we have some IP or we have homes or we have children, then we want to start talking about moving into getting a trust established. And then if you're a serial entrepreneur or a serial business person, or, you know, you're killing it on the corporate ladder, there's literally different methods that we can craft for you, but don't wait until it's too late. If COVID taught us nothing at all, I hope it taught us that time is precious and life can be really fragile. And so you want to make sure that before anything happens, you are protected. So please, you guys, if you listen to nothing else, have a will drafted, please.
Okay, one quick clarifying point here. Mm-hmm. What is the difference between a living will and a will?
We like to use the term living trust because so many people get confused by living will. And so basically what a will is it doesn't kick in or key until you have actually transitioned from this earth. But a living trust, there's certain things that trigger during your lifetime. Okay. So in your living trust, you're going to have a medical directive, which is going to speak to if something happens and you want to put a special person in play. This is really, really key if you want a power of attorney. So say, for example, what happened with a lot of business owners during COVID is that if they didn't have a POA done, they might have, and they were hospitalized for COVID, they didn't have anything in writing to be able to have anybody do any type of business moves on their behalf while they were ill. And so having those things in place will allow your business to keep functioning or your children to be taken care of. Like it's such a safe all. It's like driving in a car without a seatbelt, like craziness.
Right. Woo! I got tons of questions for this, but this might need to be a whole nother episode. So y'all, if you want somebody to come back, email us, bankingatcultura@gmail.com. Put it in the show notes so that we can have you back, because I feel like estate planning is like a whole nother episode.
It's a beast
that we need to like get the nitty gritty on. But I really appreciate you being on. Tell the people where they can hire you.
Yes.
And where they can find you.
Yes. I'm on all social media platforms at attorney Domonique Price. You can find me on my website, gopricelaw.com, or on TikTok, your legal bestie here.
Your legal bestie here.
Yeah,
that's the name here. Your legal bestie like here. Okay.
That would be a whole nother part 3 of if you looked at my eyes and I got nervous as I got ready to say it. There's a whole trademark dispute as I talk right now. So I'm not immune to having issues of people biting or stealing or saying they've used something that I've said. Like, it happens to everybody, which is why it's so critical that you are protected.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on Banking at Cultura and sharing your thought leadership. I hope you guys got tons and tons of knowledge. You heard me mention this. Listen, we have an email address. bankingoncultura@gmail.com. That email address is for you to give us your feedback, ask your questions. We want to hear from you guys, okay? So email us. Now you can get directly to us, to me. My team is reading those emails, okay? Also, if you love today's episode, we want to hear that feedback from you. So make sure to leave it in the show notes on the YouTube streets, or if you're listening, tuning in, whatever platform you're tuning in from. And guys, I appreciate you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next episode. Ciao! Mi gente, I need your help. Look, the real game behind podcasts is we need to really understand our demo, aka you, our audience, so that when we go out to sponsors who help us put on this amazing show and deliver this content to you, that they can clearly understand who we serve and what is significant to you and what you value. And the only way for us to get that information is for you to give it to us. So we just created this survey. I'll put it in the show notes. It will take you less than 3 minutes, literally, but it will be so helpful for us to get a better understanding of what it is that you care about, what's important to you, what do you value, so that when we're out in these streets trying to secure the big bag and get sponsors for this show, they know exactly who our audience is and what you care about. So we can bring you the best products, we can bring you the best organizations that are out here serving the cultura, the community, you. So please take a moment and fill out the survey. I'll link it in the show notes. Appreciate you. Banking on cultura.
I cannot say that word.
You can.
Cultura.
No,
it
we gotta put this on the episode. One time.
Now I'm nervous and I'm sweating.
No, don't be nervous.
Okay.
You got this. You got this.
Banking on cultura.
Woo! Mi gente, did you enjoy this episode? Are you loving Banking on Cultura? Make sure to subscribe and follow us. Our goal is to grow this community so that we can all embrace our Latinidad, secure the big bag, and never question our cultura ever again. Please also take a moment to leave us a review. I love reading your reviews. Let me know what you are thinking, what guests we should have on, and if there are any topics you would like me to cover. I appreciate you so much for being here. Te amo mucho, and I'll check you out in the next episode.